What's happening, Renzo gang? It's another Wrestlelamia moment. This one is 10 biggest WWE gimmicks downgraded. Oh boy. I've seen the worst gimmicks in WWE, and let me tell you something. I was disappointed, highly disappointed. So, enough of all this rambling. We're going to dive right on into it. And I feel like they're going to show us one of the most downgraded gimmicks was carrying cross. I don't know what WWE was doing. Vince. I don't know why they did that, but it really made me mad. So let's dive on into this, Renzo gang. I hope you guys have had an amazing day today. So my wrestling fans, let's get on into this.
Wait a minute. What is this? What is up with this now? The Good Father?
Oh,
10 of the biggest WWE gimmick downgrades ever. Number 10, Karrion Kross. It's amazing how much Vince McMahon
That's
screwed
crazy.
up Karrion Kross. The former NXT champion had everything that McMahon loves
was
in a
a
wrestler.
beast in
Size,
NXT.
height,
What
and
are
an
y'all
interesting
doing with
gimmick.
him?
Yet in a matter of seconds, Vince McMahon and company managed to undo all of the hard work that Triple H made with Kross in NXT. Kross wasn't just the NXT champion when he arrived on the main roster, he was also undefeated. Kross was pushed as a monster, but he was booked like a jobber who lost in a matter of seconds. Now, granted, the man Kross lost to was a former WWE champion, but this 2021
I didn't
version
mind
of
him
Jeff
losing to
Hardy
Jeff
was
Hardy,
not the
but
same as the 2009
why did
Jeff
y'all
Hardy.
make him
He was a
chop
veteran
like
at this point, and it would have been assumed that he would put over the new upcoming star. That match instantly killed Kross as a character, and fans had lost any and all interest in him on the main roster. So Vince McMahon
Yeah,
tried to
that
shake
really
things
made
up
me
for the
mad.
NXT champion. Unfortunately, it only made Kross's character even worse. Not only did they strip everything that
Yeah.
made Kross unique and interesting down in NXT, but Kross randomly showed up in a weird outfit that was probably purchased at a local sex shop. Unsurprisingly, this didn't get Kross
did
over,
not like
and the former
that. That
NXT
really
champion was
upset
then
me.
released a short time later.
I was very
Wisely,
upset about
Triple H
that.
brought back everything that made Kross compelling down in NXT, and whilst it took a while, Kross finally seemed to be getting over with the audience. We're only just waiting now for WWE to pull that trigger, as Kross is undoubtedly a future megastar in the company. Number 9,
Definitely
Paul
is.
Burchill. WWE is no stranger to
Oh God, Paul Burchill. Oh my Lord. I have not heard that name in so many years. This was the Ruthless Aggression era when he was dressed like Jack Sparrow. I hated his character with a passion. I was not a fan of Paul Burchill at all. Even when I had the game SmackDown versus Raw 2007, I never picked this guy. I was not a fan of him, period.
wacky gimmicks, and sometimes those silly gimmicks can get over. A Paul Burchill, whose first run in 2005 consisted of him going from a ruthless ass kicker to a Jack Sparrow imitator. Now the thing is, Paul the
That was
Ripper
so
was seen as a
stupid.
fun mid-card gimmick that the fans were genuinely
I
invested
did
in.
not like
It also helped that his entrance was cool as hell as he actually swung down from the stage. But the problem with this gimmick was that it always had a glass ceiling. WWE clearly didn't know where to go once he reached that ceiling in 2007.
I hated that
Fast
character.
forward to 2008, and WWE brought him back. Burchill was a talented performer, so it was cool to see him get another shot in the
It
WWE.
was
Katie
strange,
Leah,
yeah.
his storyline sister, was also a talented performer, and these two could have been really something special. However, Vince McMahon got the bright idea that Paul and Katie were more than just brother and sister. They were the Cersei and Jaime Lannister of WWE.
I remember
For
that.
some reason, Vince McMahon had a thing for incestuous relationships, as he also once pitched an idea for Stephanie
Sick,
McMahon to
man.
carry his own baby, but luckily that was scrapped.
sick.
Now, unlike Game of Thrones, this was not a
Like,
popular
Vince
gimmick,
just-
and the company only dropped subtle hints at the incestuous
I'm gonna be
relationship before putting a full stop to it once they made the transition into the
quiet.
PG era. Sadly for Burchill and Leah, they floundered on Raw and SmackDown since their disgusting story was put to an end. Number 8, Jesse. At WWE got one wrapped up.
Oh,
so why
I
not?
remember Jesse. Biscuits and gravy. And for those that don't know who Festus is Luke Gallows, aka Doc Gallows, one of the members of the Bullet Club, and also tag team partner of Carl Anderson, the Good Brothers. WWE, they fumbled him. They fumbled Luke Gallows. They
Repeat
fumbled
it with
him.
Jesse from Jesse and Festus. Admittedly, Jesse and Festus was a fun little act, but it became apparent that Vince McMahon saw more value in Festus than Jesse. Once the pair broke up in 2009, Vince probably felt that Jesse needed a new character and gave him Slam Master Jay. The problem was that fans didn't take any of
I
it
don't remember
seriously.
that.
The reason the Doctor of Thugonomics gimmick got over with Cena was because it felt genuine to who Cena was, plus his charisma really helped carry the act. Slam Master Jay felt like a poor Vanilla Ice imitation. It
I
didn't
did
help
not
that
remember
Slam
that, and I'm
Master Jay
glad I
was
did
essentially
see that
a
crap.
jobber between the ropes. Now, we're not saying that the Jesse and Festus gimmick was an unbelievably innovative idea, but it certainly went from bad to worse when he became Slam Master Jay. It even hurts more to the fact that Slam Master Jay is actually a good wrestler. The gimmick had Future Endeavored written all over it the moment he came out to the generic and lame rap beat and started talking like Jamie Kennedy on Malibu's Most Wanted.
I'm glad I did.
Number
glad
7,
I did watch
Sin
that.
Cara. Now, there's no doubt in WWE's mind that the Sin Cara project miserably failed. Although to credit Hunico, the man that briefly took over the gimmick, he did his best to get the gimmick over as much as possible. However, once the Sin Cara vs Sin Cara rivalry ended, the former WWE star was unmasked and revealed to
This
be
is
a normal
horrible.
Latino. Well, we weren't expecting anything else, but it took away the mystique from the character. Once the Sin Cara gimmick was done and dusted, Vince and company thought that they would take it back to the streets and turn Sin Cara into a Latin gangbanger. Because in Vince McMahon's eyes, that's the only one of few things that a Latino can be in the WWE.
That was
Either
so
that or landscapers,
stupid. Like,
as seen with the
come
Mexicools. And there wasn't anything outright offensive about the gimmick, it was just stereotypical garbage about how WWE typically saw their foreign talent. If it wasn't
And for those that don't know who Camacho is, that was Tongaloa. That was Tongaloa.
a foreigner hating America, that they would usually represent the worst part of the culture stereotype. The gimmick was lazy and lowbrow, banking on all the stereotypical acts of a Latin gangbanger, instead of giving Hunico and Camacho an actual character with substance. Now, the fans just couldn't take Hunico and his homie Camacho seriously. They played their parts well, but they were doomed the moment they were saddled with this one-dimensional gimmick. Number 6, Chavo Guerrero. But what's worse than playing a Latin gangbanger? Well, turning a Hispanic guy into a white guy. Chavo Guerrero denounced his Hispanic heritage and began playing a stereotypical rich white male. Why did Vince give Chavo this gimmick? It's not entirely clear, as Chavo himself explained that he went to a Raw show and Vince started greeting him as Kerwin White. Like Hunico, there was no depth to the gimmick. He was just imitating a white guy, and how that translated to his matches didn't do much for Chavo in the slightest.
I don't remember this,
the gimmick
and I'm
was
glad I
offensive.
don't.
There was absolutely no heel logic for why Chavo was pretending to be this character, plus it shamed the Hispanic culture and made fun of the white culture. For Kerwin White, there was no point to his character. He was a goofy heel who couldn't be taken seriously as an upper card talent, nor was he entertaining enough to be accepted as a lower card name like Santino Marella. The gimmick essentially destroyed his career in WWE. Number 5, A-Train. Now, A-Train was always a solid wrestler, but the problem with Matt Bloom is that he never actually stood out. When he was a single star, he was rather forgettable. His run in TNA saw Trish Stratus and Tess take center stage, and when A-Train was released in 2004, he just didn't stand out from the sea of big men. Now, he wasn't bad enough to be put on anyone's worst wrestler list, but he wasn't good enough to be taken seriously as a top star. From 2005 to 2011, Bloom competed in Japan, and though he never reinvented himself past his A-Train persona, he gave good performances in his time with All Japan and New Japan Pro Wrestling, which is how he got a shot returning to WWE in 2012. Now, it's well known how much Vince loves big sweaty men, so it wasn't a surprise to see Lord Tensai, his new WWE name, upon returning, getting a main event push right out of the gate. Now, even though 8 years is a long time, plenty of fans remembered him as simply as A-Train, and for those fans who didn't, Tensai didn't particularly have buzz surrounding his name coming in. New Japan was hot in the North American market during his time, so barely anyone witnessed his stint there, so Lord Tensai came across as another bland giant that had the backing of the WWE machine. For the most part, his matches coming in were fine. Heck, his bouts against Cena and CM Punk could be labelled as good, but nobody could take Lord Tensai seriously in this gimmick, and the Japanese influences did nothing to enhance his talent. In fact, WWE even made him speak Japanese. It added to the gimmick. However, Tensai obviously couldn't speak the language and was clearly reading off from the notes. This made his promos seem insanely bland. And despite getting a rare clean win over John Cena and CM Punk, WWE pulled the plug on Tensai within a month, and he ended up becoming a comedy character with bonus play until his retirement. Number 4, Chad Gable. Chad Gable is an accomplished amateur wrestler who competed in the 2012 Olympics. You would think that WWE were giving the Kurt Angle treatment, but he had...
Yo, Chad Gable is nice in the ring. He is so underrated. They need to push Chad Gable.
One thing that hindered many men in WWE, his height. Gable and Jason Jordan did pretty well in NXT. In fact, American Alpha had plenty of takeover classics that reminded fans of the original Team Angle duo of Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin. But from the moment that Gable and Jordan jumped onto the main roster, it became clear that Vince saw Jordan as the star, not Chad Gable. The duo didn't last as a team for a full year on the main roster, and Gable hopped around to several different teams since he disbanded with
I did
Jordan.
not
Then
like
the
that. I
2019
hated
King of
that.
the Ring tournament came around, and Gable looked like a star. Fans knew that Gable was a talented performer, and his tournament matches were a must-see. It finally felt as
Woo!
if WWE were going to give Gable the singles push that he truly deserved. Sadly, he lost to King Corbin, but that wasn't even the terrible part. For some odd
Shorty
reason,
G.
WWE decided to lean into Gable's hype by calling him Shorty G. I guess in Vince McMahon's mind, Gable taking on the insulting name was a form of strength and relatability, but it was an embarrassingly awkward stage
It
name
was
that
really.
hindered Gable as a performer. Now sure, WWE was
I,
giving him a
I
push
could
during the
not
Shorty G
stand
stint, but it was
that.
impossible to take Gable seriously as a top star. His character was based entirely on his height, and there was no depth or nuance to this gimmick that allowed Gable to really showcase that he could be a big star in the company. Chad Gable himself has deemed this as the lowest point in his WWE career, but thankfully he got rid of the stupid name and has been better off without it. Number 3, Ricky Steamboat. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is one of the best wrestlers to ever step foot in a wrestling ring. He had classics against Randy Savage and Ric Flair, and plus Steamboat was very popular with the fans.
I
Unfortunately for
remember
Steamboat,
I seen Ricky the Dragon Steamboat last year when I went to AEW for the first time. That was crazy. I never thought I would see a legend like him and Jeff Jarrett. Wow. I still can't get over I seen Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
he made the grave mistake of asking for a week off because his wife Bonnie was having their child. Reportedly, Vince McMahon was furious when he requested that time off, so the former WWE chairman did everything in his power
Why
to
would you?
embarrass Steamboat. Vince had Steamboat drop the Intercontinental title to Honky Tonk Man after only holding it for 65 days as punishment. But Steamboat would leave the
Why?
WWE in favor of World Championship Wrestling, but whilst he sustained an injury
His
in the ring
child
on
was
his
born.
foot, he managed to fully recover and then eventually returned to the WWE in 1991. But he wouldn't
You
return as
can't be
just plain old
serious.
Ricky Steamboat, he would return as the Dragon Ricky Steamboat, literally a dragon. Steamboat would come out to the ring in a dragon costume from head to toe, and he was literally breathing fire. It was at this point that Steamboat could only be seen as mid-card at best. Steamboat would have proudly represented WWE as a top star in the company, but the selfishness of Vince McMahon killed a promising athlete's career. Number
See,
2, Earthquake.
I'm glad he's
Many
not running
consider
the company no
Earthquake one of
more.
the
I'm glad
underrated
he's not.
performers of his generation. The WWE Hall of
He
Famer
just
first made his
do
splash
too
onto the
much,
scene
man.
in All Japan Pro Wrestling, until he
Yes,
made his
he do
transition
too
over to
much.
WWE in 1989.
No wonder why they
Earthquake
voted
was a
you
good
off.
worker
Like,
for a
dude,
man of his
do too
size,
much,
and his
Vince.
breakout feud was against the legendary Hulk Hogan. Earthquake would also have
All
great
because the man
rivalries
wanted
against
to
Jake the Snake
see
Roberts
his
and
child
Greg
being born. Are
Valentine,
you
highlighting
serious?
just how good of a performer he really was.
I don't
However,
know
Earthquake
Earthquake,
was
so-
always overshadowed by some of the bigger men on the roster. He truly didn't connect with fans until he teamed with Typhoon to form the Natural Disasters. The gimmick was nothing new, but the Natural Disasters were an entertaining act that added dimension to the stacked tag team division at the time. Earthquake would briefly leave the company after a 2-year stint with Typhoon and came back in 94, but that run was very short-lived. Fast forward to 1998 and
Cringy.
Earthquake came back to WWE, but in the eyes of
Cringy.
management, there was no way that John Tenta could come back as Earthquake. Tenta lost a considerable amount of weight, so Vince reportedly felt that he needed a new gimmick because fans wouldn't believe that he was the Earthquake. Unfortunately for John Tenta, he was given one of the worst gimmicks in the Attitude Era. He came
What is
back
that?
as Golgo, one of the members of the strange group known as the Oddities. Golgo wore a gold mask and was portrayed as a man who had a fascination with South Park. This gimmick was nothing more than a comedy gimmick. While the faction certainly had its fans, the group was simply
Yeah,
a
you
collection
can tell
of
all this
misfits.
stuff is Vince.
The character of Golgo was
All
rather
of this
silly
crap
and
is
comedic
Vince.
moments involving the Oddities rarely hit. While it's understandable why Vince
so
decided to change
frustrating
Tenta's
seeing
gimmick,
this
instantly
mess.
giving a lower card gimmick
Watch
made
Baron
fans
Corbin
forget
be
that at
number
one
one. I
point
bet you
this was a
Baron
man
Corbin
who was
was
going to
number one.
almost going to end Hulk
Watch.
Hogan's career. But
Maybe
now,
Corbin
he was just
comes with
simply a
Corbin.
joke.
Watch.
And number 1, Brutus Beefcake.
Oh.
Although he never won a major singles championship throughout his WWE career, Beefcake's illustrious career saw him in memorable feuds against Randy Savage and Mr. Perfect. In fact, Brutus Beefcake was the first man to beat Mr. Perfect in the ring. Unfortunately, a major accident prevented Beefcake from climbing up the division even further. Following his huge win over Mr. Perfect, he got into a serious parasailing accident that forced him out of action indefinitely. According to Beefcake himself, he was helping a friend prepare for takeoff while parasailing, and during this time, the pilot mistook a cue to take off, and Brutus's friend was somehow pulled into the wrestler's face, with his knees crushing Beefcake's facial structure. Beefcake reportedly lost his nasal cavity and jaw, and he also had trouble breathing on his own. It took over 100 feet of wire and 32 screws to help reconstruct a new face.
Good God.
Beefcake would make his return in 1991, but under a misshapen mask, while wearing a fishing basket around his neck. It's not clear what the new gimmick was, though there were reports that claimed
Well,
that
that wasn't
Brutus was
his
playing a
fault.
character called the Marina. The Marina was actually a very short stint for Beefcake, as he didn't even wrestle under the bizarre gimmick. The gimmick was dropped randomly later in '91 as Brutus Beefcake simply returned as his previous character without much explanation. The reasoning for the transformation was clear, but it's still unknown why WWE chose to give Brutus such a bizarre character. But there you have it, folks, 10 of the biggest WWE gimmick downgrades ever. Be sure to leave your comments down below. I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.
All right, as y'all can see, a lot of that, all of those were Vince. Yes, they were him. They were not Triple H. Triple H would never. And then a lot of them, it was just so cringy, and it was so like, why Vince? Why? Like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. How are you going to punish this man for asking for a week off? And he asked for a week off to go see his child being born, and you punish him for that? Like, get real, man. I'm glad he's not running the company no more, but you still sold the company to TKO, and you're mad at Triple H and Stephanie, but you sold the company. You messed the company up, bro. I ain't gonna lie, Vince made WWE like so hard to watch, but wrestling is not always gonna be at its top peak all the time. It's gonna have its ups and downs, and right now WWE is kind of going through it right now again. AEW's going through it too. I might start watching TNA again. But with that being said, Renzo Gang, this is another Wrestlelamia video. I hope you guys did enjoy my reaction. Hit that like button, share, and subscribe if you did. And if especially all my wrestling fans out there, if you love wrestling stuff, I will continue to keep giving more wrestling content. I love wrestling. I love it. Whether if you want to see something from TNA, New Japan, GCW, AEW, MLW, WWE, whatever. Let me know and I will. I will. I will get to it. So with that being said, Renzo Gang, I love y'all. I will see y'all next time. You feel me? Yeah.